Coming up on this episode.
I was a grunt, right? So what does that translate to? Especially like if I was to go to fidelity.
What it means is no civilian equivalency.
What it means is they take your resume and
Yeah.
So, right.
West of the 7-3, eastern, there is a large urban control.
Low pass, show of force confirmed at the enemy.
Outside the wire.
Guns good.
Welcome to episode 4, Outside the Wire, and today we have another new guest with us, another Marine, Tian. And today we are talking about why is it so hard to either find a job after you get out of the military or to keep a job. And we're going to share our experiences, kind of looking for a job.
Well, it's obvious. Everyone else is the problem, not you. That's
Yeah, like I don't know why people aren't just jumping to hire me because I'm obviously amazing. But yeah, so we each have unique experiences, and hopefully you'll relate to one of our point of views, and hopefully it'll be helpful. So we're going to start with.
Let me start by saying that there's no book on this either. Well, there's probably a book out there. Someone wrote a book somewhere on it, but I'll tell you one thing. Like with me, is it's been shift on the fly. Welcome everybody. For those that don't remember me, I'm Chad, United States Marine, retired sergeant from 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, and going to civilian life can be scary, right?
Well, if you're being honest, yes.
I think so.
But I think a lot of us pretend it's not.
Yeah, we want to get the hell out. And
Yeah, like no.
I'm not
if I
getting
can,
that anymore.
if I can make it through Iraq, I can handle anything.
Right. Yeah.
And then you get slammed in the face, and you're working at Kinko's, wondering where you went wrong.
Nothing is wrong with anything wrong with Kinko's though. Like,
No, Kinko's is great.
If it's a good,
If you need
filler job,
high
then you
quality
need-
copies
Yeah.
at a premium price, Kinko's, by the way, is one of our sponsors for this episode. Anyways, yeah.
So
Sorry, I totally messed up your flow.
you're fine.
I'm going to do that a lot. I'm just going to jump in and
It's good.
screw you all up.
That's what we want, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about military versus civilian, right?
Yeah.
So, what are some things in the military that we're used to when we enlist?
Well, obviously you have, I think some of the things that are unique about the military is the regimented, the scheduled, and a lot of it is you are told what you will be doing and how you do it. And
in the least amount of words. I think.
right,
that's,
yes, you have to figure it, yes, exactly.
You know,
But there's so many things that are interesting about, you learn so many good traits and so many good skills and so many character qualities that are awesome and employees are looking for. If you look at, the Fortune 500 and Forbes and all these different magazines that talk about what they're looking for, veterans and their character qualities are always a sought after thing. But some of the drawbacks to being a veteran and someone looking to hire you are you don't have a lot of experience how the civilian sector works. You can't go from a military Marine Corps mindset and then just jump right into Kinko's, where Sally over here isn't loading the cartridge properly in a timely manner, and it's driving you nuts.
You're knife handing them.
Yes, Sally, God damn it, I told you to put it in this way. Now get out of my way. And then Sally goes and files a report, and next thing you know,
You're being fired.
You're fired. And that's basically Tian's life
That's
story.
basically my
And that's what happened to Tian.
my career path so far.
Yes. So you have a unique perspective, and to be completely upfront and honest, definitely not trying to come across as subject matter experts. We are not giving you advice or telling you what to do. We're just sharing our experiences and what we did, what we're doing, and what we're figuring out as we go. Just so that, to drive home the purpose of this podcast is to just share information with other people so that we can learn from each other, because we're a brotherhood and a community. But you had some interesting questions that we talked about in the very beginning. You were kind of trying to figure out what it is you want to do.
I think I still am. So, I mean, I was a reservist. We were activated twice. So, you know, going from active duty to civilian side, I was a student going to school at UNH. You know, it was kind of frustrating, and you kind of build a lot of resentment towards, I guess, the general population, because you know you serve overseas in Iraq, and then you come back to a college campus, you know, which has its advantages, obviously, but it does kind of play a little bit on your mental psyche, just kind of flipping back and forth. You know what I mean?
Are you saying the other students didn't understand you?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think there was a language barrier. I think that was mainly the
Well,
language barrier.
Yeah, I understand you.
Thank you.
This is a safe. You're safe
In
here.
a safe spot here?
Yes, you're in a safe spot.
I love those spots. So really my issue was, and I guess my Asian background, you know, having parents that are Asian, they're extremely, they're like overly ambitious for their own kids. So I was pressured to go to school immediately, don't take any time off, you got to get a job. If you're not pursuing higher education, you got to work, make money, save money, you know, and I don't think they really understood you need time to decompress. So basically all that kind of built up, and I finally get to the real world now. I can't hold a job to save
Well,
my
and one of the
life.
things
You know, it's-
just to give, like, to paint the full picture that I don't think you really touched on is you spent time in Fallujah, and what was the time frame you were there?
Standard was nine months.
No, I mean, what years were you in Fallujah?
05.
So, I mean, obviously pretty significant time in
Sure, yeah.
Fallujah.
I
Like,
mean,
there was...
yeah, there was IDs and you know your typical combat stuff.
But you weren't, so, like, what I'm saying is you weren't like a typical reservist where you did a 2-week a year or 1 weekend a month. Like, you're a combat veteran.
Oh, correct. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, I just wanted to make sure that we understood that was, like, the
No,
situation.
yes. Yeah. No. As a matter of fact, we didn't have to do our 2 weeks because we got activated for the year. So, score.
So when you sign your contract, yes, 2 weeks, that sounds awesome. And then you're like,
Dude, I signed up.
I'm doing a year in Iraq. Like,
I swore in. I put my name on the dotted line on August 27th, 2001. And the recruiter was like, dude, it's been peacetime for like fucking sorry for my language, for like a decade. You're golden. You escaped through the Marine Corps. You're fine. I'm like, sweet, yeah, reserves. Because I was like, my first thought was like, oh, my mom's gonna kill me. But then I was like, oh, I can tell her it's the reserves. She'll be okay with it. And then September 11th hit, and I'm like, oh man,
Surprise.
and then I was like,
And you
you
were
know what,
like,
this could
yes.
be pretty cool. This would be cool. And I was really disappointed. You know, the first time we didn't get to go over. The rumor was they gave the wrong vaccines to the wrong, so that battalion ended up going over.
the Marine Corps screwed up your vaccines? I can't
Does that
even
happen?
imagine.
Does that happen?
That doesn't
Active duty?
happen.
I thought like active duty.
No, when I got all my shots, they were very forthcoming with exactly what they were doing to me.
I thought active
And-
duty
Yeah,
was like there was
I
no
don't have
mistakes in
any side
active
effects
duty.
from it
Active duty
whatsoever.
Marines are
No, yeah.
perfect. You know,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask you to stop twitching over there.
but really, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to fit in. I mean, I was working at Fidelity Investments, and that I was essentially forced to resign. They were like, hey, you need to resign or we have to let you go. And I was like a top producer. I was doing sales. I was aggressive on the phones.
Knife handing everybody. yelling and screaming.
Knife handing people through the phones. I mean, that's a rarely acquired talent.
You'd think that would be something that the civilian sector would
Yeah.
seek. Like, oh, I notice here on your resume that you are expert knife hand over the phones.
Yeah.
Let me talk about that real quick, because when you get out of the military, they remember that tap. What is it? Tap and tap.
Tap reg bang.
No.
That's the only tap I know.
It's-
That or
it was a
tapping the
class.
forward
It was
assist.
TAP. It was a class it was a separation class that they sent to you.
Oh, transitional assistance program.
Yes.
See, and I acted like I didn't know what you were talking about.
And you had to like they're like, okay, we'll show you how to do a resume, right?
Yeah.
And they had that little factor that would bring over like, I was a grunt, right? So what does that translate to? Especially like if I was to go to Fidelity.
What it means is no civilian equivalency.
What it means is they take your resume and
Yeah.
So So the only thing that I knew that I could go do was law enforcement, security, something along those lines where I still carried a gun for a living, and that's I went that route. That was easy transition because that's the type of guys they look for. But then I also heard it was like, well, everywhere I went, and I went into these places, it's not like it was over in Iraq. You can't just shoot anybody you want. Well, that's not what we did. Like, you know what I mean?
someone said that to you?
Yeah, I've had that said to me, and I had to laugh.
Yes, that's
because
what we were doing over there. I was
it
in
was
Iraq,
like,
and I was shooting
Right.
anyone that I
Just,
wanted to.
yeah,
I
right.
wish I was.
How do you not
Is that
smack
your
it?
response?
Well, that's
You're like, I wish.
that part in a civilian life.
Yes, that's when you're like,
you can't smack people. That's frowned upon.
bearing. I will conduct myself
So-
as a professional.
So for me, I come back, and after being injured, I go to TAP, and I'm just like, okay, I have no idea where to begin, So I end up going security, and security for me just helped ground me out. It kind of gave me the same the military kind of mindset, like that paramilitary aspect to a point, but also start learning to deal with that civilian transition, right? Because there are people that they've never been in the military; they've just been security guards their entire life. There's nothing wrong with that, but excuse me, you got to learn to deal with those type of people,
Yeah.
right? And so I came in and I rose the rank pretty quick to like watch commander. And basically what I did was a defend in place. It was no different than us sitting out on our line, little sticks and our little fighting holes.
Fan fire.
This is your left lateral limit,
Yeah.
this is your right lateral limit.
Yeah.
Can you have pen flare wars between the posts? Because that's what we did, and we caught fire to one of our posts.
Yeah, no, that stuff had to stop. Like you couldn't do that stuff anymore, right?
The fuckery isn't really applicable to the civilian sector. So that's
Yeah.
rule number one. Yeah, don't do that.
So it came down to Marines are pretty stickler for most protocol, right? Like when it comes to security, right?
Right, yeah.
Be up
You
in
have
the
your
gun-
SOPs.
Be in the gunner truck, be in the gunner seat.
Right.
You're watching this part, the next guy, like even walking in a formation, right? Everybody had a job
sector.
to do to interlock every sector of fire to make a big 360 around that unit moving.
Right.
So when you're getting in and you got a guy putting his feet up on the table and they're watching little movies and you're like basically walking up to go check on them and they're getting caught off guard and they're like, oh geez, what, and then now here comes the Marine, right? Here comes the service member.
Right.
What do you do about the knife hand and everything? And they're looking at you going, you're a psycho. Like,
Well, and it's amazing too how when you talk about strengths that you bring from the military, Marine Corps into the civilian sector, especially something like law enforcement, security. I go into like ballparks. I work in different ballparks for sporting events and stuff like that, and I find it laughable as you're walking through security. They're checking your backpack. They're having you go through a metal detector, and I'm sitting there thinking like, if I really wanted to get something into this building, you clowns are not going to stop me from doing it. So if you were going to be in a security forces or a security detail type law enforcement, I could see how being in the military, bringing that to you, watching that almost complacency or that disregard to like real world, especially when you have deployed to combat, when you've actually seen.
you're a little hypervigilant.
Yeah, well, you see the effects of someone being complacent.
You take it a lot
see,
more seriously. I mean, it hits home a little bit more.
Yeah, if someone rolls your checkpoint and the person on point with the gun doesn't do his job and the rest of us get fragged, that's a huge deal. Where if you're running security at Walmart and the guy makes it out the door with a bag full of groceries, no one's life ends. But you're the guy who is
Who buys
supposed.
groceries from Walmart?
What Walmart do you shop at?
Every one of them.
And you don't buy groceries?
No, not groceries.
All right, I'm going to have to ask you to leave this podcast.
Okay.
I buy groceries from Walmart.
Apparently, he's too good for us, Mr. Fidelity.
I still eat Starkist tuna.
So,
That's all I eat.
moving into, I feel like we're all over the place here. We're not really like.
This is
We're right
like.
here.
Okay.
We're right there.
All right. So where are we taking it next?
We'll kind of go here.
All right. I jumped in. Let's let you keep rolling with
Let's
it.
not track time.
No, I think
I threw. It's my fault. My fault.
No, it's fine.
I'm just looking at the clock and like we're at 15 minutes. I want to make sure that we hit our timelines.
So let's back up for a minute. Let's talk about everybody. So being in the military, right? How many service members, how many Marines did you see that were like, I'm getting the F out of here. I'm done. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna smoke a ton of weed. I'm not gonna do anything. Anybody yells at me, I'm gonna slap them in the face.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna punch them.
I would say probably all of us. to some
every
extent.
single one of them.
Yeah, I think every one of us had to some extent our new line in the sand, new things that like I remember saying that I will never be outside in the cold without sleep again.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever have to be at work and
Against your
be-
will, against
yeah,
your
against
will,
my will,
against your
and I don't want to be hungry. I don't want to be sitting out here waiting on someone else to tell me when it's okay to eat chow. Those kinds of things just did not sit well
Put
with
your
me.
hands in your pockets.
Yes, I'm going to literally spend an entire year with my hands in my
I
pockets.
remember waking up at 3 a.m. to go to the range for 6 a.m. and turning on the light switch in my bathroom and going, God damn it, I hate my fucking life. I can't wait until I can just not have to flip on a light switch at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that thought.
Yeah, that's those kinds of things
At that
definitely
moment,
sear into your brain. And I think this is something that we should definitely bring up because when you talk about post-traumatic stress and where that stems from, post-traumatic stress is basically the idea that something traumatic happened to you and it is memorable enough and it locks into your brain and it changes your behavior going forward. And it doesn't have to be a super traumatic experience like being hit by an RPG or your mom yelling at you because you joined the Marine Corps.
Yeah, that's probably the most traumatic. Yeah, that's probably the most traumatic thing.
Something like
You never met leaping.
something like being woken up at 05:30 every day
It
for
gives
a
you
year.
anxiety, man. That's like
Yeah, it does.
Can
It
I ask,
messes with
can
you.
I ask you guys something? Do you ever miss some form of that?
yes,
In some way though.
Yeah, and that's what I.
Yeah,
can't get
absolutely.
over.
That's like the dichotomy of the military. You love, hate it.
That's the traumatic stuff that you do. That's part of your life.
Yes. Well, and I think sometimes you realize, like you can tell. I think we all have this little inner voice when you say, I'm not getting up at 05:30 ever again. And then you create the habit of getting up at noon every day. There is definitely that piece of you that's like, you're a scumbag. You just suck.
Well, then you have a kid, and then you have two kids, and all that goes on.
So,
Yeah. And then reveille has been established again.
we all want to separate. We all want to get out of there. We don't want to be yelled at anymore. We don't want to wake up when they tell us. We don't want to eat. But then now we get out, and now we have to function as a member of society, right?
Yeah.
So where do you take that? Do you take that and become lazy and keep waking up at noon and have no job, or do you try to do exactly what you're taught in the Marine Corps and survive and push forward? Right?
Yeah, I think my opinion on all of these topics is always going to be kind of a similar trend. Being very honest with yourself, being very self-aware, I think situational awareness is like such a huge part of my character that I always want to reinforce situational awareness. Like I love being in a situation where you're like, I'm watching what everyone else is doing and I see that like there's a better way to do it. And like, let's say something silly, like there's a traffic jam, but I can see that if you follow this lane, get around that lane, and then get off this exit, you can bypass all that nonsense and get like that. To me is like one of the strengths that I picked up out of the military is that observing things on a level that civilians don't observe things.
That can be a double-edged sword, I find sometimes, because you find yourself getting frustrated a lot.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And but I think that stems back to the other, concept I was just talking about is being self-aware. So if you're aware enough to know when you're getting frustrated and you have created habits so you can calm those frustrations.
It's like being aware of the awareness.
It's
aware
kind
of
of like that
emotions.
movie Inception. We're in a dream within a dream.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
No, we're getting super hypothetical and theoretical here. And
Yeah.
but anyways, I think if you can almost pros and cons yourself, create this list of your strengths. And say, like, I'm being super honest with myself. I know that I can do X, Y, and Z better than anybody else. And I know that when it comes to a situation where this dude is doing it the wrong way, I'm going to lose my shit. And I need to work on that. I see a lot of guys that I've met and have talked with and just observe them. And I think sometimes as veterans, we kind of adopt the mentality that this is the way we are. And I don't think that you get very far in life when you become stubborn with the idea that, well, I'm an angry combat veteran, and if people don't meet my expectations, I'm going to let them have it. I'm like, well, how far is that going to get you?
Right. You're going to be no friends. You're going to be sitting on your lawn yelling at people to get off of it.
Yes. Sounds like an awesome life. And again, it ties back to that being honest with yourself. What do you actually want out of life? What do you want for a career? And I think, you're talking about this idea of you're trying to figure out what it is you actually want to do.
Correct.
And have you given that any thought? Do you have any ideas? You said, you just mentioned teaching.
Yeah, it's more like mentoring. I enjoy mentoring. And really not seeing young kids make or not make the same mistakes, but just mentor them so that just teach them, pass on my mistakes. I mean, so from what I realized after getting out and getting a job is that there are rules in the civilian world, and you have to follow, especially in the workplace, especially in the corporate culture workplace. You're still a number, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter if you're a good producer. If you become a cancer, as they call it, and you bring like a negative attitude, you kind of affect your coworkers.
Yeah.
And they get rid of you. And you know what? That's something that I struggled to find out, because I was like, I'm a stud. Look at me, check me out. I'm awesome. Check out my numbers. Check out my abs.
Right. Whip them out, big boy.
This is really, really strong Pepsi, man. Yeah. You got the real sugar stuff.
Yeah, it's not the diet Pepsi.
Cane sugars.
You can't do things like show me your abs. You'll end up in
right. No, you can't. I mean, there are rules, and that's what I've come to realize. And beyond that, you need to do something that you like. At Fidelity, I was, I was making good money, but you're literally in a cubicle.
Yeah.
Sometimes
and
for overtime, and you got to find something you love to do.
Yeah, and one of the things, like, I wanted to start, this is our 4th episode, and we're going to start kind of letting this evolve. And one of the things that I wanted to do was create a segment where we talk about what would you rather. And one of the questions that came up was, would you rather go back to Iraq and do another deployment, or spend 2 years in a 9-to-5 in a cubicle?
Well, if I didn't have a family, I'd go back to Iraq.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting how many people you ask that question to. How many people would say would they'd rather go back
Believe
to
it or
Iraq?
not, I think
Well, it was for us. It was the camaraderie. It was having a direct objective that you needed to handle, even though it was hurry up and win everywhere we went, right? But like for me, I'd want to go back if I didn't have a family, 2 kids,
Yeah.
at this point. but you knew what your mission was. You knew what you
It's
had
simple.
to do. And
I was never stressed. And
So I create, you know,
Were you ever stressed? I was never really
it
stressed
was
out.
when rounds were going by.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
but I mean, like when you're.
But it was
in the-
simple.
It was
Yeah.
simple. That's what
But
I'm
you
trying
knew
to
you
say.
still. Yeah, you just had to.
you knew what was expected of you.
Right.
Right.
You knew what the job was. You knew how to do it. You were trained to do it, and you spent.
You knew it inside and out.
Yeah, and it was your livelihood. It was
Yeah.
literally.
I mean,
like,
it's not. I mean, I'm trying to differentiate stress and like fear and that natural
sure.
gut instinct. But like, I wasn't dreading going out, on my next patrol.
So I like what you guys are talking about, because I think this is another thing that is, if I was going to offer any advice, would be the question. You have who, what, where, and why, and how. But like, why is such an important question to ask yourself to get to the root of when we're dealing with like emotions. Because when you get outside the military and you start dealing with civilians and like all these emotions start coming up, they're new emotions, they're weird emotions. We haven't really practiced how to deal with them. And I think when you experience an emotion that you are, and it's interesting, when you don't really understand emotions, we tend to interpret a lot of emotions as anger. And one of the things that, I'm going through like counseling, pretty ongoing, and this counselor that I'm talking to is amazing, and she gave me this big wheel of emotions, and I realized there's like 100 different emotions on this wheel, but like I'm the dumb grunt who's like happy, good, mad,
Very mad.
more mad,
Maddest.
the maddest. Yeah. But if you can break that down and be like, why am I mad? Why does this job suck? Why would I rather go back to Iraq? And the reasons that you just shared are great. And if you can, again, be really self-aware, really honest, and you just shared about some ideas about like what you want to do. And I think if you explore that further and say like, why are kids and teaching kids something that is like something that's really you're passionate about and you think you might be good at.
I think even beyond that, I think that the point that I'm trying to make is it's important to take time and do like soul searching, whatever you want to call it. Because I've been unemployed for like about almost a year now, and it's been an awesome year. And it took me a year to finally realize, like, you know what? I think I want to do teaching. Like, both my parents are teachers, so it kind of rubbed off a little bit. But it's important to not jump into something right away and decompress. I mean, they hold you for 2 weeks at Poundin, wherever station you're at after a tour for a reason. Jumping into something and just diving into it and just going through the motions is not healthy mentally.
Yeah.
That leads to it just leads to a downward spiral. I had to stop drinking, and I chose to stop drinking 2 years ago. That was definitely a positive, change. But it's time heals a lot of stuff. Time can fix things, but like you mentioned before, being stagnant also hurts.
Yeah.
So that's
well, yeah, I
that's
think you
also
need
on
to
my mind.
know the difference between patience and we talked about the comfort zone on the last podcast, and patience is great when you're waiting for the right opportunity, and like you said, letting yourself decompress a little bit, letting those emotions and just kind of like getting your bearings. But then when you settle into, I've been unemployed for a year, and dude, this is actually kind of awesome. But then
it's
you reach that
unsustainable.
you
Yeah.
reach that point where you're like, then you start feeling like, wow, I'm a piece of shit and I don't contribute anything and I'm not doing something skilled or making myself any better, or I'm not supporting my family, or whatever it is that makes you feel depressed or anxious, or kind of not like you're doing something that you could be doing. I think that's definitely when you need to like, okay, now it's time to start taking those steps towards.
You definitely got to understand the difference between taking time off to recompress, which is, you definitely need that, right?
Right.
You still got to put food on the table, especially if you have a family where you're in. You got to get out. Mm-hmm. But then it's versus being lazy, right? So how much time is too much time, right? It might be 2 years might work for you. 2 years might, hey, I went backpacking for 2 years. Not that I would ever hike again.
That's the first thing you decided to do is go backpacking.
No, you know, what I
Camp
mean?
Pendleton wasn't
Right.
enough. I needed
But right,
more.
that's how some people are. I didn't personally go backpacking. I'm not going to do that. But I hear people out there. They're like, oh, they like hiking, and I'm like, you're just insane. You know, like for us, that wasn't fun. Like I never went, oh boy, you know.
Sounds like Californians.
But I think that's the big difference. I think we need to look at the difference between time off to decompress and figure yourself out. That's okay.
Yeah.
Right. But versus being lazy. Right.
Yeah.
And those are the things that would help you find employment that you're going to be happy with. Because look, money can buy you happiness. I love money. I think most of us can say we love money, right? But I'm telling you, when you work for Fidelity, were you happy there? No, you were happy. But did you make a pretty good living there?
Well,
I'm sure you did. It's insurance. They don't have big skyscrapers for nothing. So again, talking about the time off versus being lazy, right? There's nothing wrong with taking time off. I wish I would have did that. I didn't take time off because I was like, I gotta get out. I gotta start my job. I gotta do this. I gotta do it because I felt like all that was going to come to an end, and my injury, believe it or not, slowed me down for a while.
What, getting hit in the face with an RPG slowed you down? That I don't.
Yeah, but going through the surgery
Slowed you down.
slowed me down a little
I mean,
bit.
you're a grunt. Like I thought that shit just bounced off and you kept rolling.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. But it.
I used to just catch them in the air.
Yeah.
They'd fly by me with a
I was
crush.
going like this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, you one up. You're a one upper. I would catch him in my hand and then just stick him in the dirt. And he's like, "Oh yeah, watch this," and you try to catch him with your teeth.
Because
Yeah.
when we're out there, we have lots of time too. It's hurry up and wait, right? So Marines will eat bugs. They'll do all kinds of crazy stuff. I thought it'd be fun to get an RPG.
Yeah.
I really didn't duck. That was the problem. So
It is a problem.
I had a good almost year and a half of reconstructive surgeries and time in the hospital, and that's a lot of fun going back and forth and coming in and out. But the problem was I didn't take time to stop and smell the roses. I was like, nope, I gotta get going. I gotta start running. I gotta be ready to handle the next feat, which that time's gone. I can't get it back. You know what I mean? And that's for me. Like, I wish I would have had that, but I'd be curious to see what like our audience thinks. Like, time off versus how long? Like, what's a reasonable time? What's not a reasonable time?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. I think, like you said, the audience is also part of the discussion and the dialogue continue. If we have on these platforms, you have the Instagram, the Facebook, and the YouTube channels and the blog on our website. You can continue this discussion. You can talk, share what worked well for you, ask questions. This is, again, the whole purpose of this is to talk through these problems in a way where we can share information from like-minded individuals, people who have experienced similar to what you've experienced, and what works for them and what works for you could be something that somebody's already experienced and already done. And why not let someone else help you kind of bypass the stumbling through it phase and just getting to the what works phase and just allowing you to just start applying what works. So I think this is a good spot to stop this podcast. I think, we talked about some ideas of, kind of how what happens after you transition out of the military and how to take that next step. And the next couple episodes coming up, I think we're going to talk more about some opportunities and resources that are available. I'm sure everybody knows about the GI Bill. There's some other opportunities out there as well, and how to actually go about using them. And then Chad works for the police department and he's in a lieutenant's position, so you get a lot of people where you're actually having to oversee, fire people. So we'll talk a little bit about when you're looking to be hired, specifically as a law enforcement officer, or just when you're building a resume, what kinds of things you should be working on. So we're going to talk about that in the next podcast. And we want to say thank you for watching or listening. And Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
Mayhem, this is Bravo 67 QRF. We are moving to contact exit gate 2. We are Oscar Mike.